If you want to look at the picture that's in it. I thank the Lord for safe travels to and from our little trip to Indiana. Thank the Lord I found my keys. I had a, I know. I thought I had lost my car. I took my keys with me on the trip, which, you could think, why would you take keys you don't need? Well, in my way of thinking, I was like, Rhonda, if I leave my keys, God forbid any ever break in the house, they can steal both our cars. I mean, isn't that how most normal people think? And so I'm like, I better take my keys. We could not find them, like borderline panic. And I was like, please, what? And I was like, shush. And I was like, please. I was like, please, Lord. And they were fine. They were in the back of the seat in their car. So everything was good. So that sounds kind of silly, but thank the Lord, because those key fob things are expensive to replace, I think. So this morning, the picture that I sent, I heard my wife, she just started talking out loud when she opened the photo. What do you see going on in this picture? I'll take a moment to let you share. What'd you say? A lot. That is right. It's a busy picture. Little what? A little puzzling, pardon the pun.
It reminded me of like a little kid's toy.
Mm-hmm. It does. It does remind you where you have to fit those pieces, that teaching kids shapes and what fits. Anything else? Oh, probably not.
Pieces match the puzzle itself, and that's a problem, isn't it?
But the puzzles are already done.
The puzzle already put together, and okay, so why all those extra shapes? So when you look at those photos, something of that, and it's just a bunch of shapes, and I had this created. Man, AI has been a gift in many regards for me, but for creating a visual, it's awesome. Because I used to try, and I don't mind that I had to spend time doing this. It was still fun for me. I would try to search and find something that I thought could, it's hard to always pick something that represents what you're thinking. Well, now I can tell it what I'm thinking, and it'll create an image to try to represent it. So I see a lot of shapes, and you've kind of alluded to this. They are excluded from the container. They are not included. They are left out because they don't fit. They're different. They are different. The objects outside the box, they to me represent a lot of diversity. Somebody said there's a lot going on in that picture. If you had to pick which are the most interesting shapes, which actually ones would you pick? It could depend on your preferences. Which shapes are most interesting, inside the box or outside? I think outside, personally. The objects outside the box have so much diversity to bring to the inside of the box that they appear as if they're not welcomed because they don't fit. There's no room for them because the box, someone already said it, but the box is already full. So I said, well, what's the purpose of the other shapes? Well, I don't know. Well, that's often how the case can be in a lot of situations. Things are already full. Do we have room for something different? Yet in the inside box, to me, if you look at it, if you looked at what would bring visual interest to the picture, where were your eyes most drawn? Now, you take the inside of the box, but where do your eyes tend to possibly look more? It depends on us as people. What'd you say? For some people, it would be the outside because they're colorful. They have a little bit of diversity to them. They just look different. And the inside of the box, so the inside of the box is really, to me, if you took it as an analogy, it's missing out. It's already full. It's predetermined what's going to fit. It all looks the same. The inside of the box actually could be categorized as a little dull. It's overwhelmingly similar. It could be considered organized. But what do we do when things disrupt our little vision of organization? How do we fix them, or do they fix us? Or do we need to be fixed sometimes? Sometimes do we need to think outside the box? Is it always about me making things fit how I want it? Not always, is it? If I had that approach in my job as a teacher, I'd have a really hard time. Because kids come from different family backgrounds. And I often use my job as an analogy. Kids come from varying situations, and guess what they don't fit? The way I was taught. the way I was brought up, my mom was pretty much kind of an authoritarian. And I have navigated that into my personality largely even as a teacher because it provides structure, it provides stability, it provides order. But sometimes you get somebody who don't fit the box. So do I fix them? Well, sometimes they have to learn what's appropriate, and we do have to fix situations. But the objects outside the box, they vary in color, they vary in their dimensions, they vary in their edges, and they vary in their looks. Some of them are, one of them is not a complete solid. Which one is not a complete solid in some regards? It's a little donut. It has a missing section. It is not a complete surface all the way around. The shapes outside the box offer a lot of potential, but sometimes we can't see potential because it doesn't fit our box. As a teacher, that can be hard. You sometimes overhear, and I'm old, so I try to be very careful, especially with young teachers. I know what it was like to still be learning. When kids don't fit the image of what they hope for a lesson, it's hard. Sometimes you got to modify the lesson. You have to modify your approach. You have to modify what you do. And that's part of navigating, just for my job, many of those of you who do, some of you do nursing and medical, some of you do electrical. Some things fit nicely. There's set procedures, and that sets our brain very well. But when you work with people, everybody's different. And so sometimes when kids don't fit an exact box, that can be hard as an adult charge, especially I think sometimes when we're younger. But the inside of the box is easy. Boy, it's nice when life is easy, isn't it? It's comfortable. The things outside the box are challenging. That's actually sometimes when we grow the most, when we are challenged. As a teacher, I've had many situations that has challenged my thinking about what it means to approach students. And that's often when I've grown the most, because I've had to learn to modify and adapt my approaches to many different personalities. There's a place, if you look, the inside of the box is comfortable, it's predictable, and there's a place for the inside of the box. There are places where comfort, and as was mentioned, organization. I like organization. That's just how my brain tends to work. But look at all the shapes surrounding the box. I think sometimes if we leave them out, we kind of miss the whole point that sometimes things are just different, aren't they? They bring something much more interesting to look at. They bring a little bit of something different, but they're getting left out because they don't appear to fit. And I want to use that image as a challenge to myself as I was reflecting on things that I learned. Whenever you go to a camp meeting or you're in a situation of that nature, often I hope we can all walk away feeling like we've learned something that has challenged our thinking, something that has made me reevaluate or think about what I think my understanding is of situations. So for me, this image is a challenge to think outside the box. It doesn't mean you compromise, it's nothing like that. How many potentially beautiful opportunities are missed to share the love of Jesus simply because I do not challenge myself to think outside the norm of what everyone else may do? Sometimes the most rewarding situations are when you do something different. When you do something that may challenge yourself as an individual, when you take an approach. As a teacher, learning to let go of how I've always done things can be very hard because there are set ways and set paths. There's this running joke. It's hard for a teacher who has laminated lesson plans. Lesson plans that are laminated, meaning they've been preserved and so perfected they don't want to diverge from it. But society has changed tremendously in my own, this coming year is my 26th. It's changed a lot. There's a lot that's changed about even brain development. So there are times I've had to think outside the box and do something that may have stretched me a little bit. I find people who can think outside of the norm, to me, they are fascinating. People who can think outside of the norm or who can think outside of the way things have always been done. As a teacher, I find it fascinating. I learn from them. As a Christian, I find it fascinating. I think there are things we can learn from them. Often, people who think outside of the box that they're so accustomed to, often when you encounter those people who think outside the box, when I encounter them as a teacher and I encounter kids who are that way, often they are very creative. They're very critical thinkers. Often They're willing to not only challenge the norms in a respectful way, but they're open to changing their own way of thinking. Therefore, they evolve with the situation. They can adapt much easier than people who get in that fixed rut of a box. They have a very hard time. There are people who have a very hard time, I know, in job-wise, who changing their way of thinking, changing their approach, because that's just so outside of what they're used to doing. The people who struggle with such challenges are those who often are typically, they live very comfortably inside their box they've created. The problem is, what's outside of the box in our picture? Things. A lot of interesting challenges, a lot of potential for some fun and for some experiences. The people who struggle with those challenges are often the people who, again, they live comfortably inside their box. They are predictable. Often, maybe, they get in a rut. Maybe they feel a little dulled in their experience, but they're comfortable. Sadly, they can miss opportunities. If I'm using this as a spiritual analogy, if I got into a rut inside my box, I can miss opportunities to share the beautiful experience of knowing Christ with others, because the others that I experience don't quite fit in my own box. What do you do about that? What do you do about meeting individuals? Because you say you love Jesus and we want to share Jesus, right? But what if you only share Jesus in the ones who already fit your mold? That's comfortable. That's easy. Do you know where I've grown the most as a teacher? I can just relate to my job. I can't relate. I don't know what y'all do. I can relate to mine. Where I've grown the most is when I've challenged myself to make sure I can build a relationship with the kid who's often my most challenging, often the most draining, the one who may be not as easily fitting into the mold of what a good student is. That is where I've grown the most, because they challenge you to think differently. They challenge you to do something different in an effort to try to reach. And what if I took that attitude as a Christian? Help me, Lord, to think outside my box, to think about what missed opportunities could be surrounding my box, but I don't see them because I just want to stay with what's comfortable, predictable. And there's comfort in all those things for sure, but I need God's help. Jesus, this is what I do find so interesting when you think about Jesus. He challenged assumptions, but he didn't do so by ignoring God's truth. He instead revealed deeper meanings. He, in a way, I think can be said, he thought outside the box, because he was challenged by the religious people of the day for his thinking. He was shamed for things he would do and promote, because it was outside the box that was comfortable, outside the teaching of the day. He would think outside of human traditions, prejudice, and expectations, but yet he remained perfectly obedient to his Father. And I love this example. In Luke chapter 10, in verse 30, you're very familiar with it, the Samaritan. I'm going to read, kind of skim through it quickly. Luke 10, 30 through 37. And Jesus answering said, a certain Jericho, he fell among thieves. They stripped him of his raiment. They wounded him. They departed, and they left him half dead. And think about all the people who came by. Who would they of the time probably have predicted would be the focus of the story? I never thought that way until I prepared for this. Who do you think the people Jesus was talking to would have thought would have been the focus of the story? Because it fit nicely in the box. Possibly, or who came by first? A certain priest, a religious person. Because that fits in the box. That would fit the narrative most well of that time. And by chance, there came down a certain priest that he passed by, a Levite. He was at a place, came at him, but he passed on the other side. But then who came that actually helped and took pity? Who did not fit inside the box of the day. He did not fit in that scenario. That challenged probably their thinking. And went to him, and they found his wounds. He left money, brought him to an inn, and said anything that was left, it would be, I believe, charged to him, and he would repay when he returned. Which now of these three was neighbor unto him that failed? It was the one unpredicted, because it didn't. It was outside the box. In that story, he presented a scenario to them that was outside of what they may have predicted was the norm. And he said, he that showed mercy on him. Then said Jesus unto him, go and do thou likewise. Jesus deliberately made the Samaritan someone that many Jews would have viewed as the outsider and even the enemy because of the time. The example of true neighborly love. He used what you would not have expected. How often are opportunities missed because they exceed what we expect to be the norm? His listeners probably expected the priest, the Levite, to be the hero, but instead Jesus challenged their assumptions. What do I do when my assumptions are challenged? Can I go outside my box of what's comfortable, or do I have to make everything fit? Bring everything in subjection to my box. If I spend time, Jesus did challenged their thinking. He challenged their assumptions and taught them that genuine obedience to God was demonstrated by mercy, not a religious status or tradition. Instead, it was the one who acted as a true neighbor. And you think about all these beautiful objects outside of that box. The box is filled with very uniform blue squares. And to me, the parable is a powerful illustration that God's kingdom often overturns the boxes people create about who is worthy. I know people change and they start to fit into the expectation of what Jesus expects of us. I'm not saying that there's not a level of conformity to things. There is in life where it'd be chaos. People create about who is worthy, who belongs, and who can reflect God's heart. Jesus' example may have been surprising to the listeners, but Jesus did not derail God's truth to make a point. He didn't stray from the truth. He just challenged their assumptions. And I think sometimes if we took a cynical person's viewpoint, if someone wants to be very cynical, they could try and take a lesson and say, you're just trying to say, let anything go, no matter how it appears. And that's far from what I'm trying to convey. That is not my goal. There are things I've conformed to that I may not have already understood because it was best because of what Jesus has taught me. Conformity that's acceptable. What I'm talking about is if you think of objects as missed opportunities for something to fit, just because it might look a little different, that's sad, isn't it? To think of what opportunities could be missed. A minister who spoke at the camp meeting, this was a lesson that I really enjoyed. I heard this person make a comment. He described in the context of the lesson what would be probably considered a pretty rough sounding individual based on appearance alone. I don't want to go into all that, but I don't even know if it's live, so I guess it doesn't. But I'll continue as I thought. So it was a pretty rough sounding individual, the way he described it. This looked, as we'd say, rough and tumble. The minister shared, and I loved this. I don't remember how he worded everything, but someone had asked him, well, what do you describe this person? Someone who can become a Christian. But the box of what we want to see in a person. I have to look for that. Look and see the beauty in something box that I can create for my team. The person he described is far outside the box you might think of when describing maybe their appearance. The minister was willing to know that even though the person is outside the box, the person still holds potential to become someone who loves the Lord. You could see the potential beyond what he said initially. God can help that person take care of other issues. Other issues can be straightened up and however the case is later. I mean, many people's appearances may change after becoming a Christian, and that can be a good thing. But I don't want to limit the image of and love and who he can work with. Just the form of what I think. That box, those that do not fit perfectly in there. But boy, they sure are interesting to view. Lots of quote unquote interesting who have a lot that they could offer. Everybody has something different to offer to the work of Christ. Because if you didn't have something different, how would some people be approached? And how could some people even be one? I'm a very different human being than other people here. You're a different human being than me, whatever the case is. What it takes for some is just different. In John 4, in verse 7, about the woman who went to draw water, and again, for sake of time, I might paraphrase some of it, because it's a pretty lengthy, 7 through 26. So a woman came, and where was she from? Again, a little bit of a theme here. Where was the woman from who came to draw water? Samaria. And who did she encounter? And she was outside the box, wasn't she? culturally at the time, would she have expected him, who was a Jew, to interact with her, or who was considered a Jew, to interact with her? No, absolutely not. Jesus saith unto her, give me to drink. So he not only acknowledged her, he asked something of her. You know, some people are easier to ignore. Oh, that's too different. It makes me uncomfortable. Therefore, what's the easy route? Ignore. It's just easier to ignore. It's easier to not think outside of my own box of what's acceptable and what's attainable, and to ignore. His disciples were gone away into the city to meet. The woman saith, and then saith the woman of Samaria unto him, how is that thou being a strength of me, which am a woman of Samaria? It got her. You're asking me? For the Jews have no dealings with the Samaritans. They were outside the box of what was acceptable. But he broke that tradition to show that he could love everyone. Jesus. He was outside that box. Jesus answered and said unto her, if thou knewest the gift of God, and who it is that saith to thee, give me to drink, thou wouldst have asked him, and he would have given thee living water. And so she continues on, and he explains some things, and says in verse 14, but whosoever drinketh of the water that I shall give, of the water that I shall give him shall never thirst, but the water that I shall give him shall be in him a well of water springing up into everlasting life. And she says, sir, give me this water. He says to her, go, call thy husband and come hither. She answered and said, I have no husband. Jesus said unto her, thou hast well said, I have no husband, for thou hast had 5 husbands, and he whom thou now hast is not thy husband, in that thou sayest thou truly. The woman said unto him, I perceive thou art a prophet. So he's continued a conversation with her, hasn't he? And he's pointing out something to her where she may need some help and attention brought to her life. And she's listening. She's engaged with them. How many opportunities can be missed because something is outside our box? And I'm putting it, this was for me to think, because I just know what I'm comfortable with. I know where things fit for me. As a teacher, my wish list of categories of what I would request from my classroom have diverged greatly since I started teaching. Tremendously. My wish list would not be many people's wish list, just because I have a different set of values and a different set of challenges that I enjoy and I professionally find gratifying. It's just changed in me as a professional. But it doesn't mean I exclude others if I get them, because it doesn't mean I exclude that. And he continues on, and she says to him, the woman saying to him, I know that Messiah cometh, which is called Christ, and when he is come, he will tell us all things. Jesus saith unto her, I that speak unto thee am he. So that example from Scripture to me is a beautiful illustration that Jesus didn't let the boxes of culture, the boxes of probably prejudice that existed at the time, because it was a they and them kind of thing, apparently. Reputation. What if people around the other wells, can you imagine, why is he talking to her? She's got all them men. I mean, that happens. I mean, it happens in church settings. People can, it's just, people are human nature. It's just, if they're human, I'm not making excuses, but people are human. They get off into a corner. They get off into some little sequestered state, and if not careful, things are being whispered that really maybe aren't always necessary. And there are opinions that could have been had because Jesus is talking to her. We've heard about that. Jesus, isn't he supposed to be some kind of prophet or something? Why is he wasting his time with her? I don't want to have that viewpoint, but the devil's real, isn't he? He can make you think things are hopeless because they're outside. He challenged probably the reputation at the time to keep him, and he didn't let those things keep him from reaching people with the truth of the gospel. And that Samaritan woman, I love the beginning of it because her reaction is very human. She was taken aback that he would even talk to her. I mean, have you ever brought up things, people look at you like, you're talking to me about church? Do you know who I am? Do you know what I believe? People can have that reaction. But it doesn't mean you have to shove things down their throat, but it also doesn't mean you have to stop and not try to explain that, hey, you're loved. The objects in my photo that lie just outside the reach of the box are all quite unique. I think one of them is pretty similar, except for maybe it's larger. I tried to look at them to see. But in general, they are quite unique. But they do not appear to the predetermined order of the inside of the box. So how do they remain? Excluded. They remain left out. How sad to think that the analogy of the box could be how some people in the world would try to make other people feel about Christ. Oh, And now there are people who don't want anything to do and they make no bones. I understand. When we were traveling to Indiana, if I have the details of this incorrect, they can correct me, of course. I think it was Rhonda Ray who mentioned that she, for some reason, she knew this, and maybe I remember this being talked about. She said she wanted to have the same goal as Brother Mark. She wanted to meet 5 new people at camp meeting. Apparently, he has said that at some point, and I may have a vague memory of that. And Mr. Tammy, I think she had the same goal too, because this has been discussed or something. And I thought, well, what a cool idea. Because when you go, there are people you don't ever really see, so it's easy to gravitate toward the ones you're used to seeing or you already know. And I thought, well, that's neat. You know, we were barely there, and they were already introducing themselves to people they had not met before, or people they may have not, maybe they've seen and never really spoken to. To me, it became kind of fun. It almost became kind of fun. Like to seek out individuals, not because they need to meet me. I ain't nothing. I don't mean nothing of that nature. For me, it was, I'm being a little selfish. It was gratifying to me to introduce and meet new people. Because, you know, some I'm not even sure I've ever really spoken to before, but there may have been faces I would have seen. And I didn't join that little endeavor because I think people need to know me. That's not true at all. I joined because it was a neat way to meet new people and a neat way to just reach out. And I thought, what a fun little idea. So that became, in our little group, kind of a fun little challenge. And if you ever notice at large gatherings, it doesn't matter how big, there are still people who can get overlooked. They don't garner the same attention as other people. That's just nature of life. I was very touched. Now, this is my observations from being at a recent camp meeting. Actually, it was Sister Cheney. I hope she wouldn't mind me sharing. This was just my observation. She was really concerned. They brought some people from their little congregation. They all kind of together. And there was a couple with their kid, and another person came, another brother or a person. And she was so worried about one of them in particular that she and Brother Stephen brought. She was concerned he would not feel included. And that just kind of touched my heart when I thought about it. Now, here she is. She's busy. She's a young mom. She's trying to balance. She's helping her kids, spending time with that young family they brought. But she also went looking for the other brother she couldn't find because she said, I don't want him to feel, I'm paraphrasing. She goes, I don't want him to feel left out. And I thought that was so sweet. The person she was most concerned about could be one of those objects outside of the box. He could be an object outside the box, one that not necessarily would garner the attention. There's nothing wrong with him being included, but he didn't necessarily fit the same mold as probably many of the people at the campground. But where else would you want him to be? That's where he needs to be, isn't it? So Sister Cheney had a burden in that to make sure he felt included. Another thing that actually became the reason I thought of this lesson. I think it was Friday morning of the camp meeting. Brother Poston had the crowd do something that was rather outside of the box. I thought it was kind of fun. His actions that morning became kind of the reason I thought of this lesson from my own reflections of that situation in particular. The congregation was singing the song, and y'all probably know it better than me. I'm not the best about song lyrics, but it was on the winning side, right? On the winning side of Jesus. So the crowd, as any of you who've been there, the congregation's in 3 large sections. So the one section had to cheer like they were winning. They were on the winning side when the first verse was sung. The middle section with the second verse, and this other section over here with the third verse, and everybody together when it was the last verse, and it was just awesome. This little sister in the front cracked me up. She was an older sister. Man, she got into that, and she was, Brother Polson was showing me the video later, and we both got kind of giggled, kind of got tickled, because she's just having her a big time. And as I reflect on what that person chose to do that morning, I kind of thought about my job. As a teacher, you have to read the temperature of your classroom, of your audience. Now, I have no idea if that brother was doing that or not with the people there. This is what it made me think of. All of you may have your own reflections. I have no idea if he perceived a lull in the energy and in the enthusiasm of the crowd, but I do know that what he did lit a little spark. It lit some involvement, and it brought a positive enthusiasm. You know why? It was different. It was outside the box. Often those situations that other people may view as, oh, let's not try that. That's too different. It became refreshing. You know, it's so funny. I'm sure, have you ever been at if you can remember being in school, speaker, church, wherever, whatever your situations are. You ever been in a situation where the speaker gets mad at the audience because there's a lack of energy? Like, have you ever been in a training? It could be church service, it could be whatever the case is, and they're just like, you can tell they're getting frustrated because there's a lull in the energy. It's always funny because they almost start to berate the listeners rather than reevaluate the presentation. It's kind of funny. As a teacher, it's much easier. But there is sometimes benefit. Now, sometimes you can't help things. They just are what they are. And you just got to muscle through it. But there is a benefit from sometimes stepping back, reflecting, and thinking outside. People, if not careful, will build boxes around their opinions. They build boxes around their traditions, their prejudices, their preferences, even their expectations. There are some people, if you look at them, people will expect nothing any different. Kids can get pegged. I just know from my job, and I know I use it a lot, but kids can get pegged, especially with behavior or learning. They get pegged at low or problem. Sometimes you got to think outside the label that you've been given and expect something different. If not careful, people can present their boxes as the way. I had a scenario once where I mentioned a student, and the adult angered me. They're like, you enjoy that one? I'm like, yes, I do. And I nipped that. I wasn't having that conversation about this student. And the person respectfully backed off because I wasn't going to have that I was not having that conversation about the young man. So sometimes we got to step outside and think about things a little different, how they need to be viewed. But when people can't, it's very scary. The box in our image limited the options of what objects could be included. For some individuals, and I mean, we all can, I can't speak for you. It's easy to fall prey. If something doesn't fit inside my box, it's easier to push it away. It's easier to disregard it. It's easier to just, I'm moving on. Jesus didn't want truth. He did refuse to let some made boxes keep people from God's love. In Matthew 8:2 and 3, who did he touch that others would have never touched? Leper. And I get it. I'm not going to go to the emergency room surrounded by some contagious parasite. Breathe on me. No. I don't plan on doing that. I'm not talking about that. Jesus understood his role and his capabilities and his power. We can do that too. But if not careful, we can limit those who need to be touched, those who are deserving of being approached. Because it may not be a physical leprosy, but some have a sinful life that gave them a leprosy of reputation. They are an untouchable. I don't go there. And people can be a little hoity-toity about it, get a little uppity in their thinking of others. Matthew 8:2 and 3, and behold, there came a leper and worshipped him, saying, Lord, if thou wilt, thou canst make me clean. And Jesus put forth his hand and touched him, saying, I will, be thou clean. And immediately his leprosy was cleaned. Who is out there reaching out, even if it's not physically with their body, but it's still being ignored because they don't fit the mold of who people may think will accept Jesus' love? Who is surrounding the box? Who might be screaming, please notice me feel included? And that is personally, God help me to reflect, because I know what I'm comfortable with and who I'm comfortable with. It's easy for me to fall in that rut. In Jesus' day, people with leprosy were isolated often from society because of a ceremonial uncleanness and the fear that they would obviously spread the disease. But rather than shrinking back, Jesus reached out and touched the man first. He didn't become unclean by touching. Instead, his holiness brought cleansing to the leper. And we're not dealing with physical things of that nature, but I think we can all think of people who have a leprosy of reputation, a leprosy of their past choices that have tainted them, that have made them seem very unclean. It's a powerful reminder that Jesus was never confined by the quote-unquote boxes that other people may have confined themselves in. Human expectations or religious traditions. He upheld God's law while demonstrating God's compassion. And God helped me to do the same. I can hold to truth, but still love. I can hold to truth, but still have compassion for someone. And he did it in a way that astonished the people watching because it challenged them. It was a challenge to how they wanted to act and what they perceived as being right. So you think about these questions, and I think about them for myself. You can think about them for your own if you want. Who could I leave outside my box, quote unquote? Who could I ignore? Are there people that I could assume God couldn't use? Intellectually, people, oh, no, I would never think that. But do I act it? Is it a hidden prejudice in my brain? God doesn't want that one. They have leprosy of attitude, leprosy of spirit, leprosy of reputation. Are there traditions we've elevated above compassion? Jesus challenged religious leaders, and he often challenged the religious thinking of his time. To me, a classic example, when he healed someone on the Sabbath. How was that viewed by the religious people of the time? In Mark 3 and 4, and he saith unto them, is it lawful to do good on Sabbath days or to do evil, to save life or to kill? And what was the reaction when he challenged them? But they held their peace. They had nothing to say. They had no comeback. This example and experience for the people that people witnessed with Jesus was probably outside the box of what was normal to them. Jesus was revolutionary in many ways, wasn't he? He challenged some of the conventional thinking while doing his Father's will. And what was the result of his actions? He was ridiculed, he was mocked, and eventually he was killed. Notice when he submitted his reasoning for offering healing on the Sabbath, they held their peace. They may not have agreed, but they had nothing to counter him with. But doesn't mean they changed their way of thinking. Sadly, they may not have anything to challenge, but they stay there. People, despite good reasoning and good explanation, sometimes will remain in their boxes because it's easy. I can fall prey to this. It's convenient, it's comfortable, and it's what they've known. Even being presented with sound reasoning and explanation, God forbid, I could say, well, I'm not listening to that. I don't want to be guilty of that. What happens when I hear something outside my box? Imagine the box representing the truth. I'll end with this. What's the box represented truth that we know and understand? And the objects outside the box represent exciting new knowledge and light that God wants to show me. There's things I may have never heard before, things that I need to learn, things that God say, hey, I want to introduce this to challenge you, but where is it easier to stay? In my comfort, in my box. Imagine the box represents the greater truth that God would like to enlighten me. I instead reject allowing the understanding to be enlightening me because it doesn't fit what I already know or what I already want to understand. And God forbid, I take the attitude, don't listen to that. That is to me frightening. That is to me scary. That to me makes me say, God, help me protect my soul from any person, institution, personal way of thinking, whatever it is, because it can vary, of course, how it applies. That would limit my understanding because it goes against my own personal box or preference of what I want to believe for myself. God, help me to be careful. I pray the Lord will help me be open to knowledge, and I pray that he'll help me seek those because everybody needs his love. Who do you really want to leave out of the love of the box of Jesus? I hope it's nobody. All righty? So you pray for me. We'll give it to Brother Mark.
That's really good. I appreciate the good lesson this morning. That was great. When we think about our own situations and different places we're at and different things, it is easy to maybe overlook somebody that needs to be talked to, and needs help. One of my greatest things that comes to my mind from the camp meeting was the guy I talked to that said he was going through a struggle that I've never seen him before that as I know of. And he just seemed I don't know. I just made the opportunity till I could just talk straight to him, away from everybody a little bit, and just to try to help him a little bit. It helped me. It kind of helped me fit in more where the Lord would want me to fit. And, hopefully he felt something there too. But, well, there's a world out there that needs help, ain't there? Mercy. And you don't have to go far to find it. You don't have to go far to find it. So, Lord, help us to be what we need to and be a soul winner. We'll take a little bit of a break and move on with the service here shortly, Lord willing.